Hello, parents. Today is Monday, April 13th, so I hope everybody had a good Easter. I am going to go over today the iReady math activities that are in your packet. So if you are looking in the packet, you will notice the table of contents that there are some supplemental materials, and these are things that can be used anytime during the week. Those are going to be the vocabulary center, the count to 120 center activity, and the 100 chart, or I'm sorry, the 120 chart. So today for Monday, we are looking at the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages. Now I am not going to do every problem like I usually do not do that. I'm just going to go over the general concept so that you can help your children at home. So this week we are really focusing on the 120 chart and really getting to work with that, because we'll eventually be using this for 10 more, 10 less, 1 more, 1 less. But today what I want to show you is, I think that when we see this chart, we kind of hand it to kids and say, okay, use it. But we really want them to use this as a tool, but also as a strategy. So to get them to do that, we really have to bring out the patterns that they see in the chart, and really what is the chart. So when we introduce this at school, we kind of give them the chart, and we say, what do you notice? What patterns do you see? Now, typically I would do this as a think, pair, share, meaning that they would look for about 30 seconds, they would chat with a partner for about 30 seconds, and then we would share out as a group and write down things that they notice. So that's really not going to be an option at your house, I'm sure. So they're going to have to do this just with one student, which is fine. So I just want to show you the things that we really want them to notice. Now, when we look at this isn't the chart I typically use. Actually, I'm kind of impressed that I got these rows and columns so straight. But when the kids are looking at it, these are the things we really want them to notice. So I don't want you showing them this video. This is more for you so that you can help them with it. What I always recommend is, while they're using this for the patterns, so I would say if you use page 450 for this would be good. Get some crayons out, and then they can highlight the patterns that they see. For today's purposes, I'm just going to use 2 different colored markers. So first of all, one pattern that we really want them to find is that when we look across a row, the numbers are going up, and they are going up by 1. So when I do a jump from here to here, that's a jump of 1, 3 to 4. And if I continue that way, it's going to be counting by 1s. When we look down a column, what we really want them to notice, I'm just going to pick the 6 column, is that the 1s place when we are going down is always the same. So that doesn't change. That's why we call this the 6 column. When we are looking down a column, however, at our 10s place, what we see happening is the 10s are increasing, meaning they're getting bigger. 1 more 10 every time we jump down. So those are 2 patterns that they definitely need to see, because that's going to help them later on when we use this for adding, for subtracting, for counting up by 10s and counting back by 10s. Some other patterns that kids usually see, because they think it's cool, is when they look here, they notice that in this diagonal line, every number is, up to 99, is a double digit number. So 1 10, 1 1, 2 10s, 2 1s, 3 10s, 3 1s. You do hear how I'm kind of doing that with my voice in the room. I kind of make my voice into a pattern so that they can hear it while we see it. And they'll usually find this pattern. Something that they notice that we probably take for granted, but is actually weird about the chart, is that when we look across, when we look across in a row, the opposite thing is happening from the column. So in our columns, the ones stay the same and the tens go up by one. But when we look across in a row, the tens place is what stays the same until you get to the last number in the row. And the ones place is what we have changing, and that's going up by one. And that's important because when we start counting, like I said, when we jump from a number to a number within a row, that's a jump of one. When we jump down, that's going to be a jump of 10. So what this is going to lead to, looking at all these patterns on the chart, is the ability for the children to use the chart as a tool and as a strategy to add and subtract and to figure out math problems. So what you're going to see over the next couple of pages are blank numbers within the number chart. And the way that the kids are going to figure these out will really vary. So I am going to erase just some random numbers. And I'm going to put a box there. And I want to show you a couple of different ways that your kids may figure this out. So when we're missing this number, we may have some children who honestly look at it and just know it. We may have some children who need to go back a few numbers and start counting 45, 46, 47, 48 to figure it out. And that strategy is they would be counting by ones. Now we have some kids who are going to remember that down pattern that we talked about in the column, and they're going to be able to go 8, 18, 28, 38, 48. Some of them won't be at that point yet though where they can count by tens. So for those kiddos, I may point out and go, you can put a 0 there because it's kind of like we have 0 ones. You can go 0 and an 8, 1 and an 8, 2 and an 8, 3 and an 8, and then I stop and they go 4 and an 8. Right, 4 tens, 8 ones, what's our number? 48. So those are just some different ways. Some kids may look at this through a column to figure it out. Some may look at it through a row. Others may just know it. Now, when we get here, this is usually the easiest row for everybody because they have counted by tens with a 10 number since they've been in kindergarten. So they can usually just go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 and fill that in. When we're looking here, again, you may have those kiddos who go 61, 62, 63, 64. You may have the kids who can go 34, 44, 54, 64. And then same thing here. They may go 81, 82, or they may jump down to count. What's really important with this is that they understand those patterns and that they're able to find the missing numbers. Now, another thing that I will say, you're going to find that most of your kids should be able to identify the numbers from 1 to 100 pretty easily. If you find that they can't, like if you tell them, find 53. Sometimes I make it like a race. I'll have 2 kids come up with a pointer, find 53. Boom, whoever touches it first wins a point for their team. If you find they're having trouble with that, then you need to go back and really work on reading the numbers and identifying them. Something that we see often, and parents parents always freak out, I think, when they see this is if I tell a child to write 47, they may do this. That's still common in first grade. You do need to correct it, of course. And if they do this and I say write 47 and they write this number, I say, did you write 47? Usually that will just make them go, 47. No, I didn't, and they can fix it. If they still think they wrote 47, I will break that number apart and go 40. What should we have first? Oh, a 4, because 40 starts with a 4. And then I said the 7, 47. And then I'll ask them something like, you know, we switched these digits. If those were cupcakes, would you rather have 74 cupcakes or 47 cupcakes? And they'll say this one. Right, because that's a bigger number. But is that what I told you to write? No. So you just kind of need to guide them through that. But mixing up those digits is something that's common. As long as they can fix it when you point it out, you know, that's okay. Another thing that they seem to have trouble with are these teen numbers sometimes when they're writing them. Maybe not at the beginning of the year because that's all we're focusing on, but once we show these other numbers, it's kind of like they have trouble with that. And that's just because of the way that we say those numbers. Like everything from 21 down to 99 follows the pattern of this row is the 20 row. We say 20, we add the other digit, 21, 23, 44, 55, 67. But the teen numbers don't do that. If we were saying those numbers correctly, we would say 10 and 1, 10 and 2, or teen 1, teen 2. But we say 11, doesn't even make sense, right? 12 doesn't make sense. 13 kind of makes sense, but it's in the backwards order from all of these other digits. Here, we say the name of the 10 first, 24. Here we say 14. So the teen numbers are a little hard to understand, and I think as adults we take that for granted because we've just been saying them for so long. But when you're a kid and you hear all of this has a pattern, and that's kind of what we show them to learn to write these numbers and learn to read these numbers. But then these teens, they're just so weird, they don't follow that pattern at all. So that's something that I notice when we get into the bigger numbers. Sometimes that confuses them with knowing those teen numbers that they already knew. Now looking at the bottom of this chart from 101 through 120, those are really hard for first graders to learn to read because they've really only worked with numbers with 2 digits up to this point, and now we're asking them to go into 3-digit numbers. So I will just explicitly teach them how to read those numbers. So I'm going to erase this. And I just tell them that it follows this pattern. I'm going to write 114. So something that I do in the room is I will tell them when you see a 3-digit number, the way that you read it is this. I will box up this chunk together. I tell them you say that digit, 1. Then you say the word 100. And then whatever's left in the box, you just read it like you would read a number, 14. So we read this number 114. When they see this number, this one will kind of mess them up sometimes because of the 0. But when we read this, we say the digit 1, say the word 100, and just read this like we would. Now sometimes they want to say 60 because they want to flip those and kind of make sense. The 0 is really just telling us there are 0 tens in this number. So in this one, it's 6. So we need to read this 106. Now I will tell you with these, they are going to need some explicit practice in reading those 3-digit numbers. So what we really want them to focus on with this first lesson is 1, recognizing the patterns that we see on the chart. How the tens jump down, how the ones don't change in a column, how when we look at a row, the ones stay the same, the tens stay the same, but the ones change. Really look at figuring out a missing number and focusing on both reading and writing those numbers. Now, if you have a student who, boom, boom, is breezing through this, you can give them some bigger numbers. We obviously don't have a chart for that, but you could just make up a problem. If you have a child who is really struggling, you may just want to have them count to find that missing number. So you might just kind of have to bring it back some. So I'm going to give you just one example of how you could make this a little bit tougher if you have a student who you notice is getting everything right, or maybe tells you, oh, that's easy, I can read these numbers already. So if that's the case, now this obviously isn't going to be for most of us, but if you notice that your child is doing this, you could even try giving them 282 and ask them what number would come below it. They should be able to, if they're doing this well, they would know that it would be 292. But this isn't something that they would do until second grade. So I'm just saying you could do this as a challenge if they're breezing through this. So that would just be a way to make it a little bit more challenging. Other than that, those are the focuses for today's lesson. All right, happy Monday.